Hello, beautiful people. You're listening to Communal Table, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, senior editor at Food and Wine. My guest today is Seamus Mullen, and he is a chef, a cookbook author, and somebody you might have seen on your television an awful lot. He's been an inspiration to me for a long time because he's really open about the struggles that he has had with autoimmune disease and how he used food to reclaim his body and reclaim his life. In his books, Hero Food and Real Food Heals, he deeply explores the relationship between what we put into our mouths and how our bodies feel. And he does it in such a tremendously positive and inspiring way. I just had to sit down and talk with him for a while. Come join us. Hello, beautiful people. You're listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and my guest today is Seamus Mullen, a chef and author of Hero Food and Real Food Heals. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So if you're watching this, you can see the necklace I have on, and if not, I'm going to tell you I'm wearing a phoenix, and I wore this for a very particular reason because of my guest, who has a really pretty incredible story of how he used food to heal himself in all different kinds of ways. So can you give people a little bit of backstory of where you were maybe 10 years ago, or whatever the timing is?
Sure.
Where you want to start the Seamus story.
Yeah, where to jump in. The Phoenix, man, I love the Phoenix. I think that now my Gaelic is non-existent, but I think if I'm correct, and my pronunciation for Gaelic speakers out there, I apologize. I think it's Yuk Fagarla, meaning out of the ashes rises the Phoenix. And so, I mean, in many ways, I love that whole story of transformation and metamorphosis. I was a really sick guy 10 years ago, and I had been sick for a number of years. I was a chef cooking in New York City, but I was sick with an autoimmune dysfunction. I was overweight. I was on a ton of medication, and I was really at rock bottom. And so in the metamorphosis story, I was in the ashes. Yeah,
and you are not that now.
No, thank God.
Yeah, you frequently on your Instagram post then and now pictures and just of your state of physical being, your state of emotional being. You can you talk about, sorry to get this deep in there so early in the podcast, but you are on the brink of death.
Yeah, well, and I think I was on the brink of death in a number of ways. Yeah. Not only physical death, but I was an angry guy. What are the rules around swearing?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, good. Yeah, just in case one comes up, I got to be.
Oh, we had the Voltaggios on.
Oh,
so yeah.
Oh, that must have been a fuckload of fun.
It was a fuck ton of fun.
Anyway, yeah. So I was really, really sick, and I definitely the lowest point for me was basically going through the classic near death experience where you see the tunnel of light and everything shuts down, and in that moment I was really, I'm amazed now as I learn more and more about, we were just talking about transcendental meditation, learn more about the power of the mind and how much more autonomy we have over our thoughts and our mind than we may think we have. Or over our body. We may think that we're only able to act. So we probably don't have autonomy over our thoughts, but we have.
We can work on it.
We can work on that. But that we really are.
That
our minds our brains are really powerful in ways that we don't even realize. And for people who've gone through a near death experience, you kind of tap into a place of consciousness that I think you don't even really realize exists, and that's that decision point, that ability to exercise control over all of the autonomic elements of your body, and realize, I can choose to live or I can choose to die right now. It's actually my choice in this case, and that was a real decision in my mind when I was going through that I realized, fuck this, I'm not going to leave this place now. I'm not ready to go. I have more work to do. and I made this very, I hate to say conscious, but conscious decision in a state of unconsciousness to come back to this place that we live in, this place called Earth or whatever it is, and this life that whatever it is that we're experiencing. And I realized that my work wasn't done.
You had also, we've gotten to speak to each other a few times about this. You had some people who enabled you to get sick, some doctors who let you think it was the norm to have the back problems that you had to.
Yeah.
You were kind of failed by medicine in some ways.
Yeah. When I actually, the person who really helped me change my life and get onto a good path is a doctor who practices functional medicine, Dr. Frank Lippman. And one of the things that he said to me when we first started working together is he said, and these are his words, it's a fucking crime what you've been through. Yeah. He said that, listen, you have been abandoned by the medical community, by the medical community that we throw people in. And I was in suffering and chronic pain, but I'd had a number of issues. Like, as you said, I had spinal surgery, and when I went to see, the first time I had a slip disc, the first time that my back started to give out, my spinal surgeon told me that it was normal for guys in their early 30s to experience a slip disc, and that back surgery was not really a big deal. And to think that in hindsight, looking back, if you look at babies, we can learn a lot.
Slippery little babies.
You look at babies like they lie on their back and they put their legs and their hands in the air, and that's actually and they can sit there for ages until you turn them over. As adults, it's extremely difficult for us to do that, to lie there with our legs in the air, and if you resist, to push against your knees. It's an incredible core workout. We are because of the world that we live in, and we sit in chairs all the time, and we wear shoes, and we don't spend a lot of time barefoot. We've kind of forgotten how to move innately. Like we're constantly trying to get back to what we knew intuitively as infants. And I think if I had known then what I know now about functional movement and about yoga, and I could have completely avoided back surgery.
It's really, the power of physical therapy is such an intense thing. I went through intensely last year a pelvic floor physical therapy where I didn't know that I owned hip flexors before that. But once you sort of learn to deal with your hip flexors, it's such a thing. But being sick, so just for backstory for me, and I'm still dealing with some of this endometriosis and a gut condition called SIBO and some other stuff.
The famous SIBO.
SIBO, man. It's a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is it's really tough to kill. But I hadn't ever been so in touch with my body until I got sick and sort of hit some really pretty dark places along there and had to actually listen to it in my mid-40s. And there was a conversation that you and I had that actually really, really changed things for me. Seamus has written a couple of books. The one that I'm thinking about in particular is called Real Food Heals. And it's a lot about being kind to your gut and these foods that you can eat that are not foods of deprivation, that are foods that are living and breathing and beautiful. And you said a thing in this interview where you were saying, I eat as much as I want of these foods that I know are good for me. And that unlocked something for me, because I had always thought before about eating in this mindful way meant just portion control of little things that are specifically designed for that. And it freed me to enjoy food in a way. And how did you get to that place with food, where food did heal you?
It was a process. I mean, I was lucky in that professionally, all of my experience was coming from a place of learning how to make food taste really good.
Yeah.
But the irony is that I didn't know very much about how food impacted my health, my well-being. And I got really used to feeling like shit all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're used to feeling like shit, I was actually having this conversation this morning with a friend of mine. We were talking about dairy. And, the question is, should I eat dairy or should I not eat dairy? And I don't think there's any, there's no hard and fast answer to that. It really depends on the individual. And I know for me, for instance, if I eat dairy, I don't have like some horrific response. So I don't really notice that if I eat dairy, it has a negative impact on me. Right. But what I notice is when I don't eat dairy, I suddenly feel a lot better and I feel very different. And I think that that's something that's very hard for us to to really reconcile, because it's difficult often to understand that you might be going through life feeling subpar, and you could feel a lot better, and you could perform a lot better, and you could think a lot better, and you could be a lot happier and less angry if your body actually, you were caring for your body. When you're constantly making things tough on your body, and not in a good way. I mean, it's good to be tough on your body. It's good to have eustress. It's good to have healthy stress. But it's also really good to care for your body and not to create chronic, like, paper cuts. And,
on your soul.
On your soul, yeah. And or on your tongue, or on the webs between your fingers.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah. And that's kind of what, when you're not really... when you're not aware of how foods are making you feel, it's very difficult to be aware of how foods make you feel when you're looking through, life through a cloudy lens. But getting to a point, and for me, it was really about going through a classic elimination diet and taking out all of the major offenders, and then seeing and healing my gut and getting to a place of being less just noisy and kind of calming things out a little bit. And then I could start to add things back in and take notes. And I did something really stupidly simple, but it was very helpful for me, is I took photographs of everything that I ate.
Oh, that's smart.
And it was easier than actually logging everything down and writing it down. So if I mean, everything, even like a glass of water, I'm drinking a glass of water, take a picture of that. And then at the end of the day, I would spend just a couple of minutes writing a little journal entry about how I felt. And if I consistently felt crappy, then I'd look back and look at the things that I'd eaten and see if there's a correlation.
Yeah.
And one of the things that became really clear to me is that when I was eating really oily food that had a lot of canola oil or had processed oil, I felt terrible.
Yeah.
When I ate a lot of sugar, I felt good, and then I felt terrible. And I started to recognize all these places that sugar was hiding that I didn't think I was eating a lot of sugar, but realized that I was.
It's sneaky.
Yeah. And the other thing that I realized is that if I wasn't sitting down and having a meal, just actually a meal, I was eating much more than I thought I was eating at the end of the day. I was eating I was always kind of not hungry, but not hungry.
Yeah.
And it's not a great state. And now what I do is I generally don't eat until the middle of the day. This works for me, to not eat until the middle of the day. And I'm quite hungry by the time I just ate a meal like half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago. That was the first thing I've eaten today. I went to the gym. I had a busy morning. I was quite active, but I felt totally fine. By the time that I had my lunch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 2:30 in the afternoon, I was very, very hungry. But I ate it slowly, and I didn't eat a huge lunch. And immediately after eating it, I was actually hungry again. I'm like, I still want to eat more. And then I gave it a minute and drank a glass of water. And then I was like, oh, I feel great now.
Yeah. Listening to your body is such a hard thing to do. And you did one of the most masochistic possible things you could do to your body, which is be a chef.
Oh,
Chefs,
God. Yes.
Nobody is worse to their bodies, I think, than chefs, because you have to taste everything. You're having little bites of things all day. The hours are awful. And if you don't mind talking about this, and if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. We had a previous panel discussion where you talked about being the angry chef and like clearing the past and stuff. How much of that was driven by your body? Can you talk about that kind of behavior and where that came from? Yeah,
well, anger is something that you see happen or appear a lot in kitchens and professional kitchens. And I think it's driven by a number of things. It's driven by the high stress of the environment. It's also driven by there's kind of this expectation because of the culture that and the long history of the kitchen that's very militaristic and very kind of 19th century in many ways. That the only way to manage is through fear, and yelling and screaming are a big part of that. And then, of course, for me, add on top of it that I felt like shit all the time. Yeah. There's a lot of anger, and then you add substance abuse to that, and that totally changes the way your rational mind works. So I was very angry for a long time. I kind of fell into this what I call victim role, and it's really tempting and syrupy sweet to be a victim because it takes the responsibility of your circumstances off of you.
Oh, he's sick.
Yeah,
he's like that
exactly.
Kind of thing,
yeah, well, no, not so much that. It's more like, why me? I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. And then you get angry because you feel like you're just the victim, and it's not your fault. And of course, illness is not an individual's fault, but illness is often a byproduct, or the severity of illness is often a byproduct of decisions and mindset. So it's very hard to be, it's very hard to love yourself and care for yourself when you're in a state of just being hard on yourself all the time and also acting like a victim and angry.
Yeah, I know some of this pretty well. I try not to externalize it, put it on other people, but then again, I was managing people. I was in a state where I was feeling so sick and in pain from endo and SIBO that I was in a physical therapy session, and I referred to my body as a piece of garbage. My physical therapist started crying a little, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "Please don't ever say that about yourself. Don't think of your body as that. This is your body trying to heal you."
Yeah.
And it struck me because I could tell, like, oh my God, this person loves my body for me more than I do at the moment. It was a really incredibly, thank you, Stephanie Seamus, of Beyond Basics Physical Therapy, who is an incredible human being. And that was hard too, because I realized I during that time, I wasn't being the friend I could be. I wasn't being the wife I could be and stuff, because I was just feeling mad at my body that whole time. It's a hard thing to get past. And especially if you're in a situation like a chef, and you have seen this behavior modeled for you, if you have seen people act out physically in the kitchen, and you're just going to repeat it because that's a valid way to do it, how do you switch out of that to the people around you if you're still working with the same people? Do you come in one day, all of a sudden, hey, I'm still Seamus and I'm nice now, or how do you make that pivot?
God, that's a very good question. It's really hard. I mean, they're going from a state of self-loathing, which is very difficult,
very real.
Yeah, and it's real. I mean, I for many years I hated the meat vessel I was living in.
Yep.
And
I understand that.
And hated the way my clothes felt on me. I hated looking at myself in the mirror and what I saw. And that's not uncommon. I think lots of people go through that, body dysmorphia and all of that. And to me, it was really driven by this state of constant inflammation and feeling like shit.
Yeah, inflammation.
And when you feel like shit all the time, it's very difficult to love yourself and love your body, because this is this thing that's making you feel like crap. When I was able to start to make positive changes in my life, physically, that led to positive emotional changes and behavioral changes. I lost the better I felt, the less I had interest in doing in behaving in ways that were damaging to myself physically. Substance abuse, for instance. Those are things that I knew were damaging, and I didn't want to beat up the progress I was making. And then as I started to feel better, and as I started to get like these glimmers of hope that I could actually change the direction of my health, I had a sense of gratitude, and gratitude for the opportunity to live a life that wasn't in pain again. And that really shifted the way that I thought about, it's the people around me. And New York is hard. New York is a fucking pressure cooker. And you get on a bicycle and you try to ride through traffic, or you get in a car, and everyone is angry all the time. And I know that Louis C.K., although he's a bit of a fallen angel, but he had an incredible piece that he did once about. He had this like stand-up skit where he talked about driving the car when we should be the most compassionate, and we're actually complete assholes. Like, imagine, getting into the elevator with somebody and telling them that you wanted to kill them and whatever because they just bumped into you. Right. There's this in New York. There's just so much, and it's not just New York. It's the world that we live in, because we live in a world where everybody's doing 1,000 things at once, and it's very difficult to put everything in your life on pause and just have a conversation. But I found that, like, if I could try to be a bit more present in whatever moment that I was in and put away the extraneous things. So if I was having a conversation with someone, put my phone down and try to have the conversation as best I could, that it was a little bit easier for me to shed some of that anger. And it's a process. And I still deal with it on a daily basis. I'm still an angry asshole sometimes.
I think there's a lot in recognizing that and being and accepting it and seeing it too. It makes me nuts to, I see some people who, have now adopted this sort of mantle of like, look, I do the yoga now. I do all this stuff now. I'm like, but it's still okay to have feelings.
Yeah.
Like therapists have always said, like, feelings aren't good or bad. They are just there. They are, and acknowledge them, and they can kind of flow through you. And it's like communicating that to, onto you have that choice a million times a day if you can what you're transmuting to somebody else. And again, like that kitchen structure really exacerbates that too. And I have seen more and more chefs take a different route and sort of sometimes publicly, sometimes quietly get sober, or stop taking that easy sort of end of shift drink or going out with their staff after work or something, and decide to do that, and having maybe a lot of nervousness around that at the start, because like, what if they think I'm not a fun guy anymore? But then they see the effect as having it on their teams. Can we talk about like modeling that better behavior for people who work with you?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the great things about positive behavior and self-love is that it is contagious.
Yeah.
So and there's a difference.
I quote you on that all the time, by the way. You have no idea how often I quote you on things.
Good, yeah.
But that is definitely one of those things.
Yeah, it's like there's positive contagion. And I think that's a good thing to remember, because if you see somebody, maybe we call it inspiration, but I like to think of it as being more than just looking at someone and being like, oh, I'm so inspired by what this person has done or does, but rather I like to think of it as I want some of that to rub off on me. I want to catch that. And that accountability too of being around, creating community. I mean, the journey that I went through is not a remarkable journey, as much as it may seem like it was. I was able to, with the help of so many people, reverse an incurable autoimmune disease and get off of tons of medication and get back to a place of really being comfortable in my body. But I did that with a lot of help and a lot of determination on my behalf, but it's not unusual. A lot of people, there are so many people that are suffering unnecessarily that can do that. So recruiting the team around you, recruiting your community to and encouraging them to, rather than have a cigarette break, have have a conversation break, have a meditation break, have a walk around the block break. Those things I think are really important to try to. And the kitchen is obviously a hierarchical structure, but if you can look at your team and just, to me, it's super important just to check in with everyone, see how they're doing, and just have like an emotional check in. That goes a long way. Oh, huge. And it's not to say that you're going to give up on doing the after shift drink or going out to dinners all the time and everything. But it's if you can start to change the patterns to where the majority of the patterns that you're following are positive patterns, I think that's a really good start.
And I think there's a big shift in the chef community. We go to the same conferences and things. I remember the first time I really sat down and talked with you, we were at South Beach, and I was just starting to really realize there was something wrong with my body. I remember
you were in a lot of pain.
I was in so much pain right then. That was before I got a diagnosis, and I was white knuckling it through that time. I was at a couple of points like curled up in my hotel room because I didn't understand what was happening while I was in so much pain. I remember seeing you during that, and I think maybe you saw something that I needed to talk about because you were talking about cycling and things. But there was a moment that I run across a lot with chefs and or with just people who are struggling with stuff. When you see somebody who's going through those things, I get asked by a lot of people who don't know how to go to the people in their kitchen or in their lives and say like, hey, there's something going on here. Can you talk to me about it? Like how to open that conversation. How did anybody open that conversation with you, or how do you open that with people you can see are struggling?
It's hard.
It is.
I mean, it's empathy. Yeah. It's genuine kindness and concern. It's something that you also have to understand and be very aware of the fact that there's only so much that you can do. Yeah. We've both lost friends to to suicide, and that's a real tough place, because you always question, is there anything else I could have done? And of course you can't. You have to forgive yourself and understand that there's nothing, you're not, it's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done, but I think what's really important is to try to meet, whether it's somebody that's going through a physical challenge, or an emotional challenge, and oftentimes the two are completely intertwined, and we don't, like, we think of, this is where health starts, like at the chin down, and we separate all of this, but there's not only is there a physiological correlation, the gut biome and mental health and neurological inflammation is completely intertwined.
Absolutely.
But meeting people and understanding, if you see somebody you're concerned with and you see that they're not in a good place, just checking in with them and just kind of like coming to where they are, meeting with them where they are, and just listening. I mean, I think that's the most important thing you can do. And ultimately, what that person decides to do with your support and the ear that you lend them, you can't control that. Yeah. There's only so much you can do.
And you have to forgive yourself for whatever it goes. I mean, where I've come to it on this is, as I was going through a lot of the physical stuff, I took training for crisis text line. So you go through 30-some hours of training, and I just want to shout this out for anybody who can write it down for themselves, or anybody who needs it. It's 24/7, and you just text 741-741, and 24/7 somebody will be there at the other end of the line to listen. And what they say is they get people from a hot moment to a cool calm. And also it's great on a whole lot of levels, because you don't have to, I hate the phone myself personally, talking on the phone, but you can have a quiet conversation. It's for people who are going through something where it's a danger for them to be overheard. Say if they're in a domestic situation or at work or something, you can just text in there. But the training that they gave us was for somebody who you're really worried is potentially going to harm themselves, like the escalation of questions, and having that very direct ask sometimes, because it's better than the alternative sometimes, but you can't save everyone, and that's a really, really hard lesson I had to learn, and it's being compassionate with yourself about what you can do and what you can't do.
It's very tough. It's really, really, really tough.
Yeah. And then also you take care of a lot of people. This is a thing that I see as an observer of, really, because you live your life. Y'all should look at his Instagram and the things that Seamus does, where he's riding 300 miles to help other people. Really talking openly about the physical struggles, about things, and showing sort of where he was able to take his body then and where he can take it now. The thing that comes with that is when you're a very publicly sort of work in progress person, a lot of people come to you. And how do you take care of yourself when you're taking care of the world?
Well, I don't think I'm taking care of the world, but I certainly...
You take care of more people than you know, honestly.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think that's really important to me. I very, very strongly believe in karma and paying it forward, and it's not like I'm trying to work out some karmic debt, but I
am.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I really, for me, I derive a tremendous amount of fulfillment, and my ego is very fulfilled when I hear that I've been able to help someone else turn their life around.
Honestly.
And that's huge. I mean, that's really, it means a lot to me. It means much more to me than that's a greater sense of purpose in life. It's not about earning a certain amount of money or having X possession or whatever it might be. But if there's an ability to help other people, because I mean, I till I'm blue in the face, I will praise Dr. Frank Littman, who helped me, not because he gave me some miracle pill or he fixed me, but he taught me that I could take care of myself.
Yeah.
And he's a very good friend and is a teacher to me. And I'd like to think that I'm able to then play that role in some other people's lives. And with some people, it's to a greater degree, and with others, it's to a lesser degree. But it's something that I've also been very fortunate in this world that now I'm in this kind of great community of caring people that are all about taking care of other people and taking care of themselves as well. That I'm connected to a lot of people that are very knowledgeable and think outside of the box and don't take the conventional route immediately, pick the lowest hanging fruit, but are very intelligent about how they think about treating illness. And I'm I love to be able to connect other people. So, so if a friend comes to me and says, I have a very good friend of mine, my closest friend, his wife has been going through some health issues, and they initially thought that she was having a heart attack, and then her arms are going numb and all this, and she was kind of shuttled from one specialist to another with zero, her heart's fine. Okay, well, send her to the neurologist. Her brain is fine. Yeah. And she's just dealing with real pain and real chronic issues. And so I was able to spend some time with her and then think about who's the right person for her to talk to, make some introductions. And, she's now taking a very different approach to caring for herself and making progress. And that's something that I'm fortunate to be plugged into a community of people that are very smart and caring. But there's also a point at which you kind of have to draw the line. Yeah. I can't respond to I try to as best I can, but I can't respond to every bazillion request that's asking for, what do I need to eat and what's my diet? What should my diet be? And the reality is I can't answer that. I can't tell someone what they need to eat because
you don't know their body.
I don't know their body.
They test their levels there.
Exactly. And ultimately, even with working with a really good nutritionist or doctor of functional medicine, it comes down to the individual. How do you feel? Like, how do you actually feel? And until somebody knows how to answer that question, how do you feel in the relationship that you have with food? They're never going to really progress past being ill.
And everybody's body is so different. And I realize with SIBO, like, it looks a million different ways. Like, my trigger foods are so different than anybody else's. Yeah. And a thing that I've had to really contend with is forgiving myself for having bad days when I'm not feeling okay. Because you get to a point where you think, I've solved it. I've done all the things. Here I am. And then, recently, like, I've been feeling really cruddy again, and I have to figure out how to do that. And it's emotionally very disappointing because I thought like, I thought that was in the past. I thought I tackled it. How do you do that? How do you respond in those moments when, do you feel like you need to constantly put on an air of like, no, it's all great now? Or do you let yourself be a human?
No, I definitely let myself be a human. I mean, this past year has been a really stressful year for me. I've had a lot of really serious challenges I've had to go through. And it's okay to sometimes feel like shit and just allow yourself to feel like shit. I think it's important to remember, and this is something I'm constantly reminding myself of, is that life is a roller coaster. Oh yeah. And it's not, and it's a roller coaster that keeps like going and going. It doesn't get to some destination. You don't arrive at healthiness. You don't arrive at,
I'm here.
Yeah, I got here. I packed my bags and I made it. You get there and then the weather changes. Right. You get to the beach and it's raining and then you got to do something else. So the thing that I try to remind myself of, and I saw this written somewhere. It probably was on Instagram because all these great little quotes, but it's a good one, which is that you've survived all the worst days of your life. True. So the number of times that I have felt like, oh my fucking God, this is the end of the world. Everything, the world is collapsing on me. Then something miraculously happens. 6 o'clock comes around and people stop sending emails. And it's Friday, and until Monday morning, you get back to being, life isn't so bad, and then Monday morning it all starts up again. Right. But there's a moment of like just kind of disconnecting and realizing that none of this is going to kill you. This shit isn't going to kill you. Yeah. And it's okay to feel terrible and feel overwhelmed. The real challenge, and my brother has been in my life really helpful in reminding me of this, is that my brother's very practical. He's very pragmatic. If I had a dime for every time he said block and tackle, but he's always like, you just got to block and tackle.
What does that mean?
I don't even know what it means because
I'm not a sports person.
No. Well, yeah, I didn't realize for a long time.
Is that a sports thing?
I think, yeah, it is a sports.
Sounds very football-y.
Exactly, but his whole approach is, okay, if you've got 1,000 things to do, just knock 2 things off the list, and then look at those things that you've done and pat yourself on the back because you've accomplished a lot. And maybe that's all you can do today, because sometimes even crossing off a couple of big ticket items from your to-do list takes so much emotional just energy to do it. It leaves you completely devoid of any capacity to do anything else.
Yeah. I get overwhelmed by what they call buffet syndrome.
Yeah.
Like this.
What do I do?
Oh my gosh. The kindest thing, honestly, I know I probably have talked about this.
I've never heard that buffet
syndrome. Oh my
syndrome.
God,
That's
somebody.
So great.
Well, and especially like I got diagnosed with ADHD in this past year and went on medication for that. And it's really, really helped with some of that
buffet syndrome?
Yeah, because I was like, I can focus on this task. And it's been a really, really great thing because I would end the day feeling like super crap because I did a little of a bunch of things, but didn't get to completely cross off anything.
Yeah.
So that's really huge.
Yeah, it's sort of like I also think of I like to remind myself of the Japanese tradition of focusing on one task and doing it really well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good at that.
I'm learning.
It's hard, but there is something really remarkable about that idea of doing one thing and doing it very well. And I know that for me to get good work done in that environment really involves putting the phone down.
Oh God!
Because the phone is this constant like distractor. It's like constantly pulling you away.
Yeah.
And the iPhone. Someone once pointed out to me that the iPhone, if you look in the back of the iPhone, the Apple logo is an apple with a bite taken out of it. Yeah. It's literally the original sin. It's temptation. It's temptation. It's the image of temptation that you're constantly being tempted to something else, which makes it really difficult to have a sense of accomplishment because you're never really 1,000% focused on the task at hand.
There was one point in the last like half year, and I realized what are all the ways that people are trying to get in touch with me, and I came to email, Twitter DM, Instagram DM, Facebook DM, Signal, WhatsApp, text, and phone.
Postcard.
Oh my God.
No postcards and letters?
Probably from my dentist or
exactly.
something. And I was like, and I was beating myself up that I wasn't able to sort of address all of this. And then I realized, well, no, that's just too many things. I was asking, I had Yasmin Khan on the podcast, and she was saying she deletes all her social apps at the beginning of the weekend and puts them back on her phone on Monday. And I thought, like, that's really smart. Oh, and Slack. I forgot about Slack, which is...
I've heard of that.
I actually really, really like it because it cuts down on email significantly. But what does a really good self-care day look like for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, so I have a house in Dutchess County in the woods.
Yeah. God, that's great.
And it's really, really beautiful, and there's no cell service.
Oh, same. Yeah. I have a place upstate, and
no cell service, and for all intents and purposes, there's no internet either. There's really crappy satellite internet that doesn't really work for anything.
That's great.
So it's really, I try to go there as often as I can. And what I love is that when I get there, I put my phone down, and I don't really have this fear of my phone not being fully charged or like, where is my phone, or it's got to be on me at all times. So a really good day of self-care for me is cooking, exercising, maybe a little bit of reading, watching a movie, being in nature, being outside, going for a hike, going for a walk, going for a bike ride, tinkering, just cleaning, vacuuming. I love to vacuum.
Really?
Oh my God. There are few things that I enjoy more than the sound of dust going up a vacuum cleaner.
That's such a chef thing. I feel like.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. So what's your favorite vacuum?
Well, I'm taking endorsements right now. I love
Seamus.
Miele. I love Miele. I have two Miele vacuum cleaners.
That's nice design.
Yeah.
We've got a Dyson pet hair vac.
Oh yeah, those are great too. I had a Dyson for a while, but I found that it was just too complex. I like the simplicity of the Miele.
Yeah. Are you a mopper, a sweeper? Or?
No, I hate doing that. I hate laundry. I hate making the bed. I mean, I make the bed, but I don't like to make the bed.
Yeah.
I can't stand folding laundry. I don't mind doing laundry, but folding laundry I can't stand.
Okay, luckily my husband is a very neat person, and I actually put it on our wedding vows about
really?
my various messinesses and stuff. But he's so great about like his own stuff, ironing and folding, and luckily he does like the household stuff, like the napkins, all that stuff. But just heaps of my clothes everywhere, and sorry about that, Douglas.
You're a saint, Douglas.
He really, really, truly is. Weirdly, painting is the task for me. We've been like painting a house, and that's been really like that repetitive task.
It's therapeutic.
Oh, it's so good. I just painted a whole kitchen black, like chalkboard paint.
Wow.
And with glossy cabinets. Oh God, I had seen it in Rachel Ray's test kitchen ages ago, and it's the most calming, beautiful thing in the world.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. So then, okay, on this ideal day of self-care, what are you cooking for yourself?
Gosh, it really depends on what time of year it is, but I do a lot of, I love to grill, and I love to cook vegetables outside and cook things really slowly, and braises, and I mean, tons of vegetables. There's so many things that whenever I can cook outside, I love to cook outside.
Yeah. I'm a fire person.
Yeah, me too. So I've got grills and things outside to cook with. And I don't know, I just like to, I love having meals with lots of people, big family meals. You won't find any bread, but you will find lots of fish and meat and veggies and lots of deliciousness.
So what is that meal that you have when you're like, okay, I need a reset. I am going to make this, like, what is your go-to dish for just like my body needs to feel better, my gut, my spirit, my whatever. Like, what does that food look like? What's it served in? Mm-hmm. And how do you eat it?
Well, let's see. One of the things that I really have been into lately is making just these soups with braised bok choy and ginger and garlic and shiitake mushrooms and braised chicken and like a really clear chicken consomme. Mm-hmm. Just super, super clean and light and delicate and flavorful, and just that to kind of start. And then maybe some roasted cauliflower.
You and cauliflower is a special thing.
Yeah,
let's talk about that with the gochujang. Let's talk about that dish. Because there was a roasted cauliflower in your book, I believe. Tell the people what this is.
The one in my book is a really simple roasted cauliflower dish. It's made with coconut oil, lime juice, cilantro, sea salt, and maybe some pepper of some sort, like maybe a little bit of something, or Aleppo pepper or something for a spice. But it's super simple. But that's like, I love roasting cauliflower, or braising cauliflower, or steaming cauliflower. I mean, it's good stuff. I'm a big fan of cauliflower.
Yeah. So
you know what I've been doing? Actually,
tell me.
I've been taking whole heads of cauliflower and putting it in the smoker and just smoking it for like 3 hours.
I think to me, one of the most relaxing contemplative thing, like we talked some about meditation. My most meditative thing is taking care of a smoker. Mm-hmm. Just that, and I have a really, really plain barrel smoker that I switch out the coals on and the woods and things. And that moment of that ritual of like mopping the meat, the vegetables or whatever in there, that whole ritual, I just think is probably when I'm at my calmest.
Yeah. There's something really nice about just observing food as it changes. And when you're doing a slow cooked piece of meat or something like that, you really have to pay attention to it, but you're watching this process. You're slowly watching it transform. Yeah. And there's something very meditative about it.
And then you get to feed people at the end of it.
Oh, which is and that's all. And people are always, it's always tastes so good when you're cooking something slowly like that.
What is the meal that you make for a friend with a broken heart?
Ooh, it's kind of, it's a little bit of a cliche, but roast chicken. It's just like so comforting. There. Comforting roast chicken, braised mushrooms with chicken jus, and then just kind of like carve the chicken and spoon the mushrooms and jus over the chicken with some fresh herbs. Super simple.
Yeah. How about for a friend with a cold?
For a friend with a cold, probably back to that soup that I was talking about before, because that's really that one's.
Can you just break it down?
Sure. So, start with a really good chicken stock. Clarify it if you're really totally nuts.
Can you explain for people what that means?
Sure. When you clarify a chicken stock or any stock, you're using a raft. Usually, you use egg whites. So the protein in the egg whites traps all of the impurities in the stock, which is usually like hemoglobin that comes from the bones of the chicken that you've roasted, and other and oils that are in fats that are in the stock, and then they all simmer up to the top of the raft, which you make by beating egg whites, and then you strain it off. You spoon it through a hole in the raft, and you strain it off through a cloth, cheesecloth, or through a coffee filter. It's a big process. Yeah. You can also just buy some really good chicken stock if you want. But chicken consomme, if there's something really beautiful about a chicken consomme, and it's worth learning how to do it. And the first time you make a consomme, there's something amazingly rewarding about looking at this just beautifully sort of amber colored broth that's perfectly clear all the way through. So let's assume that you've gone through the effort of making this amazing consommé, and then you can. I like to do poached chicken breast, where I'll take the chicken breast and season it with salt and pepper, and then what I might do is in the bottom of the pot, I will start by just sweating out a little bit of olive oil with sliced garlic and shiitake mushrooms, and then I'll add in deglaze with a little bit of fish sauce, and then I'll add in the consommé and the chicken breast, and I'll just poach that until it's cooked through, gently cooked through. It'll probably take like 10 minutes simmering, and then add the bok choy, and then when I serve it, just a julienne of ginger and maybe a squeeze of lime, some cilantro or some fresh herbs with it, and that's it. But it's really, really calming. It's just a very kind of like soul satisfying soup.
I mean, making chicken soup for somebody is when I was telling a friend yesterday that I have a particular soup that I make for people, especially when they have chest colds, and it's that silky chicken soup, this black skin chicken soup with tons of goji berries in there and galangal and all that.
That's a TCM favorite. Traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh, yeah. It works too. Like for me, when I've had especially chest colds and things, I was very sick around this. I end up, luckily, knock on this table. Around this time last year, I was in Toronto and I'd been just having a chest cold that was dogging me. And luckily, I was staying in a hotel that had a sort of very fancy Hong Kong style restaurant, and I think I got a black chicken soup 2 days in a row there. And I had to be like on stage speaking during this thing, and it really is what got me through in a big way.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, chicken soup in general is obviously it's one of the oldest medicines, but it's so good for the gut. All the collagen in the broth is really, really good for healing the lining of the gut when it's damaged. So it's a great, it's a win-win.
Yeah, and you've come back to ginger a few times during this. What is it about ginger for you?
Well, I think that in traditional Chinese medicine, ginger is heating. For me, it's very calming. It just adds like a bright flavor. I love to use ginger at the very end of a dish, or I'll grate it on a microplane to make a little pulp of the ginger and add it into a vinaigrette. But I like to really get the spiciness to it. But there's something to me that's very calming about it. I don't know. I really have always loved ginger.
You know what? If I'm really at my cruddiest, I actually had a drink a couple of weeks ago. I was meeting with a friend. I was at the bar at the Modern and asked them if they would make me something that was super gingery. And it was ginger in 2 different formats. They did like a cold press and then had done a hot version of it too, and cooled it down. And it was just ginger straight to the face and the gut. And I walked out of there just feeling, woo! Yeah. It was a truly beautiful thing. Yeah. And I don't know if you've gone through this or not, but for me, this has been a really pervasive thing, that because I have trigger foods and because I've got issues and things, I found myself going through that process and going through elimination and being afraid of food, which is a thing that is very terrible for somebody who writes about food for a living and for whom food has been the connector and the driver and the source of joy for my entire life. I got to a point where I was so afraid to eat anything because I was afraid it would hurt me. It affected my social life. I didn't go to restaurants for a year or so.
Yeah, you don't want to be the pain in the ass that's always complaining, I can't have that, I can't have this.
Yeah, I was so worried about that. I couldn't go out with friends in the same kind of way. My poor husband, again, Douglas the Saint, we had to completely reboot our diets at home. And basically, I still mostly paleo and really do that. But I was afraid to add new foods to it. And I got scared of food. And that's a really damaging thing. And coming back from that, I still have moments of that. Were you ever in a place where you were afraid of any foods? Or have you seen people go through that?
I've seen people go through it. I mean, orthorexia is real. It's real. It's real.
It's very real.
Fortunately, I've never. Well, that's not true. I mean, I have. Without getting like too nuts and boltsy here, but like really spicy food fucks me up. Yeah. Like fucks me up in a way that the next day just my stomach, my lower intestine really hurts. And the irony is that there's like a lot of machismo in eating hot and spicy food. And I've always prided myself on the ability to eat spicy food and like hot food. And I do. I love the flavors. Like habanero pepper is one of my favorite flavors. I love that bright fruitiness. I know how, when I'm cooking for myself, to mitigate it so you still get the pepper flavor and it's not overly spicy, and I'm totally fine with it. But that combination of pepper or dried peppers and oil to me is a killer. Like Szechuan food kills me. Like dan dan noodles is a recipe for disaster for me. I'm going to be in pain for 2 days if I eat dan dan noodles. I love them. I think they taste absolutely amazing, and it's a really hard. Definitely like a hard moment to recognize that there's things that you really love to eat that make you feel like shit. And so then you end up being kind of scared of it. I was just in Bali not too long ago, and I went to this amazing restaurant called Nusantara in Ubud. And it was, this was like phenomenal food. But I knew as I was eating it that I was going to feel terrible the next day. And of course, I did. Like, I don't sleep very well. Spicy food totally interrupts my sleep. My hands start to hurt. I get swollen joints. And then I have like a full day of like pain in my gut. And so it's hard when I travel and eating food that I'm hungry and this tastes delicious and I really want it. And as I'm eating, I'm like, it's so good. I know this is going to fuck me up. I shouldn't eat this, but it's so good. And then I do. And the next day I feel like crap again.
I actually was going to ask you about traveling. My nutritionist and I, she's Victoria Albina. She is a tremendous, healing, beautiful person who loves all bodies. And she taught me about harm reduction. If it's the difference between me being hungry and just sitting in my hotel room, like shaking and feeling sorry for myself, frankly, and eat the thing. And because I know it's not going to kill me, I'm going to feel terrible, but to go ahead and eat that, and maybe not eat all of it or eat around in kind of the way that I can. But how do you take care of yourself when you travel? You travel so much. Yeah. Well,
what you just said is really useful. Like, be aware, be cognizant that you're not going to feel great when you eat it, because then when you don't feel great, you know why that is. Yeah. And you can you can file that away in your memory bank and know that next time maybe you'll be a little bit more prepared. And might prep some food in advance to take it with you on the airplane. It is hard. To the best of my ability, I try not to eat garbage. Sometimes it's inevitable. When I was flying back from Bali, when I flew to Bali, I took some food with me. But I was flying back and I didn't have the ability I probably could have, if I really made a priority out of it, pack some food, but I didn't. And you're on airplanes for 25 hours and all you're getting is really terrible food. And I didn't feel great for a couple of days as a result of that. So, I try to, as best I can, when seek out in advance if I'm traveling someplace, try to do a little bit of research before I go to know where are the places that I can eat. And then what on the road, it really depends on where I'm going to, because if I'm going to to a great dining city like Charleston, South Carolina, or if I'm going to Los Angeles, or if I'm going to London, there's obviously going to be great options. Not so often when you go to some of the other places in the world, there aren't great options, and then you're kind of stuck and you kind of have to figure it out. And I think it's okay to just, if you live in this fear of food all the time, that's just as damaging as eating, the food that might cause you some discomfort. I often say sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is eat the slice of fucking pizza or have the donut. Because if you're going to sit there and just worry about how this is going to derail all your best intentions, or it's going to make you feel really crappy, or then you're going to feel terrible about yourself because you ate ice cream and you should have enough self-control not to eat ice cream. That's like far more damaging.
I realize I definitely have gotten into phases like that, and I'm just stealing joy from myself, and I'm not going out and having the experience. I realize the sanest thing I can do for myself is to have that backup food, shout out to RX bars, because I know if nothing else, I can always have one of those. So I have them in the lining of all of my suitcases.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually have one in my purse somewhere because I know otherwise, if it's between like not eating, having that, like, it really kind of saved my sanity. I thought, if nothing else, that, I can feed myself, and, and they're pretty great. And, they really saved me in a lot of hotel rooms in places. I remember the first trip to New Orleans after after my nutritionist said, well, I took the SIBO test, and they're like, wow, you have a terrible, terrible case of this.
Oh God.
Yeah. And that was not fun. But going to New Orleans and with a bunch of friends, we have a trip we go at Easter every year, and thinking, how do I tackle this city that I love, where all this stuff is around every corner? And I realized, okay, I have to do it in a joyful way still. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a Front 75 at the Front 75 bar, because I would be so mad at myself if I didn't do that. I realized I never feel bad when I eat oysters, so do that.
Great. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so maybe I'm not having an etouffee somewhere, and or having some of those other things where, like, God, I want that thing. The bread is rare in most places; it's rarely worth it. Is what I've realized. But then you go to like Blue Hill Stone Barns, and like, that bread is worth it.
Yeah, and have it.
Yeah,
and assuming you're not celiac, have it, and if chances are, if everything is like, if you're taking care of yourself in all other aspects, you're not going to have any. I mean, I know for me, like, if I'm eating crappy bread all the time, I do not feel good at all. But if I every once in a while have a great slice of bread that's made from ancient grains and naturally fermented with a slab of really good grass-fed butter on it and some sea salt, I know it's pretty damn good.
I went to a friend's birthday party at Danielle recently, and I was not going to miss that bread, and I was not going to miss that dessert and stuff. And and it was a really, should I have had all those mashed potatoes with cream in it? No, I should not have. But the joy in the moment outweighed the, and then I reset for the rest of the week and just did kind of like this safe foods for that. Yeah. So, but let's talk about starting a physical practice, because you are somebody who is so publicly engaged in exercise. What do you say to the person? Say it's a chef. It's because this is airing on Food and Wine Pro, which will have lunch by this time, and so we're really taking care of people in the trade. So somebody who is maybe a person who's worked on the line, and they're you can still catch them. They're still in their 20s. You can still catch them, but they've been living this life where they just treat their bodies like crap and stuff, and they've never thought of themselves as a yoga person, as a bike person, or whatever. How do you take that first step off the couch?
Yeah, it's hard because the beginning, oftentimes, if you've never really exercised before or you haven't had a practice of exercise for a while, the first few times you don't feel great. You're very sore, you're really tight, and then
self-conscious.
Maybe? Exactly. You're self-conscious. Like if you're a big dude like me and you're showing up in yoga pants. All right, maybe I'm not showing up in yoga pants, but there's definitely you're gonna feel a little bit crappy at first. Yeah. But you got to stick with it and then get over the hump. And then one of the great things about, and I've seen this with so many people, exercise is addictive. It's an addiction, and there are good addictions. Yeah, it's a healthy addiction, and for people who have struggled with substance abuse, it can often be a really great way to supplant that high. Yeah, and it's in a way that that really is just all about taking care of yourself and pushing yourself and beating yesterday and being better than you were, the day before, and that, one of the great things about movement and one of the horrible things about being a professional chef is that as a professional chef, we tend to just move in a couple of patterns. Yeah, and so repetitive things. Yeah, it's repetitive, and you're usually doing the same sort of thing. And it's funny how most people think it's like, oh, you're chopping with your knife, or you're just doing that. It's actually more like, no, you're bending over in like an inconvenient little space in the kitchen to grab a rondeau that's full of lamb shanks, and then pull it out, and you're bent over. You're not actually engaging your body the way you should to mechanically lift that weight, and you're stressing yourself, and you're doing that over and over and over again, and so you start to get stuck in these patterns that are really they're not healthy patterns of movement. So getting out of that pattern and moving, whether it's getting on a spin bike or it's going to a yoga class or doing CrossFit or whatever it might be, like you're starting to move your body in all sorts of different movement patterns, which means that when you go back into the kitchen and you fall back into those same movement patterns, you might address them differently and be less likely to injure your body. So it's really, I mean, it just, the more that you move, the great thing about the human body, it's kind of use it or lose it. The more you use it, it's good at doing whatever you ask it to do. And if you're asking it just to sit around on the couch and eat potato chips, it gets really good at sitting around on the couch and eating potato chips. But if you ask your body to jump up onto a 36-inch box over and over again, you'll be amazed that eventually you'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
And you and when you can do it, the proprioception, the knowledge of where you are in time and space, your body is in time and space, will carry over to everything else that you do, to how you sit in a chair, to how you speak to your colleagues, how you carry yourself, even your physicality. And there's amazing, like I've seen this happen with so many people who've gone through transformations from when they were overweight, or they're dealing with addiction, or they were ill, and the body language is this sort of like hunched over kyphotic state of shoulders rounded forward, and kind of the classic like looking at your phone and being very protective of yourself. And then as they start to open up and learn how to be in their bodies and move their bodies, it's almost like this unraveling, this metamorphosis of the wings kind of coming open, and suddenly they're a much brighter and more open person. And something changes hormonally in your body too when you open up your body, and you it's almost like you're allowing yourself the ability to receive love versus like shunning it out. And I think movement is really important in doing that. We evolved to move, and we've forgotten how to move as nature intended us to move. So getting back to that is so important.
And I didn't mean to sort of discount people further along. I was saying people in their 20s, well, we can still catch it.
Yeah.
You and I are right around the same age, I think. And I see a lot of chefs who are our age all of a sudden getting to a point where they're realizing, like, I can't keep going on doing the things they are, and they're seeing better behavior modeled for themselves. And I've seen great transformations. I've seen Matt Jennings.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Who's really gone through tremendous transformation and really channeled that into cycling and doing a lot of physical stuff. And I see, it's funny, I go to these food festivals, and you used to see more of the chefs like out late drinking and stuff. Now they're like, I got a yoga class at 6 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
And, something that I really press for at more and more food festivals, and that, I've seen put into action at places is like having a sober space. And more places are doing that. They're doing like the early morning, AA meetings. They're doing yoga classes. They're doing all this healthier stuff that is the perception has changed. So much, and you're right that it is.
Yeah, it's had to change because it's just not sustainable. The way, the way that guys like Matt and I came up in the kitchen. I mean, Matt changed because he was going to die if he didn't change.
Yeah,
and I changed because I was going to die if I didn't change.
Yeah,
and
Marco Canora,
and Marco and George and down, so many people that were just that it's very easy to fall into patterns that are destructive behavior patterns in our industry because we didn't have role models we had very few role models in our industry that
you burned out or died.
Yeah, exactly. They burned out or died. And fortunately that's changing. And I hope that the younger generation of cooks is now recognizing the importance of actually caring for themselves. There's sustainability in their career if they care for themselves, because if they don't, there is no sustainability, there is no longevity. And that's what, all of us have kind of figured out, that if we just can't, I'm almost 45 and there's no way in hell that I would be able to continue to burn the candle at both ends the way I did for years.
Can we talk also about how there are a bunch of you, and I think, I have in my head a canon of you who have done this particularly, who have turned that flipping the switch into exercise, into raising money for hungry kids. Can you talk about that kind of work? Yeah,
so I've been involved with Chef Cycle since the beginning, which is a division of No Kid Hungry. And we started with a ride from New York to D.C. 5 years ago, I think. And that's now grown. I think there are maybe 20 of us or 25 of us now. There's like 300, I think we had at last count, riding 300 miles in 3 days to end childhood hunger in America. And I think as chefs, we've always, the number of times that we are asked to do a charity event and donate our time and donate our food, and we always say yes, because that's part of, that's what we do. And I think everybody who goes in the hospitality business goes into it because they really care about caring for other people.
True, yeah.
And providing for other people. And so it's kind of like it's a no-brainer to think that we need to, regardless of what the charity is, we can donate our skill, what we do. But this idea of actually getting chefs moving on bicycles to feed kids, we all feed people in our professional lives. But the people who in this country who need nourishing food the most, we're not touching them, and they're not coming into our restaurants, and their families are not coming into our restaurants. And so the notion that we could actually have an impact where every dollar that we raise could provide 10 meals to a kid is something pretty remarkable. And at the same time, if we could supplant the notion of going out for drinks after work for actually going on a bike ride as a group, it's a positive win also for our community. So it's been great because it's really fostered positive behavior, camaraderie, this notion of team and accountability. People are trained together to be able to do it, and at the same time raise a tremendous amount of money that goes towards solving what Billy Shore calls a fixable problem in the U.S.
That's a good man right there.
He's a very good man, and he and Debbie are incredible, and they've done so much work, and they've done a great job of rallying and being just this incredible positive voice to get chefs moving and to create this. I mean, it's just like it's as I said, it's a win-win. We spend 3 days together riding 300 miles. It's a monumental task for most people to be able to do. It's an incredible like bucket list. Like it's like running the marathon for someone, and to be able to do that, and afterwards, just to have the satisfaction of having trained and realizing that your body can do this and getting through it with the support of your friends and colleagues, and at the same time you are making such a positive contribution is something that's just amazing.
I love that. What would you say if sitting across from you was 10 years ago, Seamus? What would you want him to know?
I think I would want him to know that there's a different way to live your life. If I was sitting across from Seamus from 20 years ago, I'd have a lot of advice for him.
Tell him, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell him first and foremost, dude, do yoga. Start doing yoga every day. And not that I think that yoga is some panacea for health, but it's an amazing practice that quiets you down, takes you away from the craziness, and allows you just to be in your mind and your body in space. And then the physical practice of yoga really is just as you're learning about your hip flexors. Well, the hip flexors have so much to do with spinal health, and the spine is the center of your body that keeps you upright. And having open hip flexors and having a strong core and strong psoas muscles is so integral to spinal health. And I would have told 25-year-old Seamus to really focus on that. But if I was sitting across the table from myself 10 years ago, I would have told myself to not despair, that there's a difference between being sick and being a sick person.
Yeah. And
that I needed to stop thinking of myself as a sick person, but as somebody who had an illness.
Yeah.
And as someone living with an illness, it's a solvable problem. It's a task that I could take on, versus if I was a sick person, if I was just a sick person, I was going to be a sick person for the rest of my life.
You told that 2.5 years ago me, and it sunk in, and it really changed my perception of my own body and how I was dealing with it. And it really, I can't tell you enough how much of an impact that you've made. And your words also, and your book, I've shared with a niece of mine who is going through a thyroid thing, and sending her your book has changed how she approaches food and her body. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, I'm so glad. The thing is that I don't have all the answers. No, well, that's, aw.
Damn it.
I'm going to start crying too. I don't have all the answers, and what works for me is not like it's not like some like golden rule, but I think the greatest thing that I can offer oftentimes is empathy,
Yeah.
and hopefully a sense of inspiration that if this fucking asshole can do it, then so can I,
Yeah.
So and I think that's really, really important, because when I was at my darkest,
Yeah.
what helped me get out of that was seeing other people who had done remarkable things and overcome remarkable obstacles, and so now hopefully I can be that person to other people, and I would, I'm truly indebted to the people that helped me, but then some of the people that helped me don't even know that they helped me.
Yeah.
They have no idea, and just learning their stories was so hugely beneficial to me, because it made me realize that, okay, there is another way of living my life.
Yeah. And here I'm giving you a chance to be selfish. What do you want from the universe? What is the thing that you want that you can say, that you can let yourself, it's hard to let yourself say the thing you want sometimes if there's something that you feel comfortable or slightly uncomfortable asking the universe for. What is it?
To help me learn how to quiet my mind. I definitely suffer from anxiety,
and both.
Yeah, and for all of the things that I do really well for taking care of myself when it comes to food and movement, I kind of have that figured out. I know I got that dialed in. I know how to take care of myself. I sleep like shit.
Same.
Actually,
I'm getting better.
Good. I mean, I would like to say that I am too, but I'm not. So I think that I guess I'm going to ask the universe to help me get better at sleeping and help me to process anxiety in a way that is healthier than the way that I do it now, because it's definitely hard.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give a little back to you right here then for everything you gave me. I said I was bad at sleeping. I've gotten a lot better at it. The things that I do. I got a thing called a sleep machine. And it is a white noise machine that is not like a regular one. It adapts to the sounds around you.
Okay.
So it masks, I live on a pretty busy street with buses and things. It rises to mask that whatever is going on. And even if something, sorry, Douglas, but you snore sometimes. I know I do too. But it rises to meet that too. So there's a mask there, and it game changer for me.
Wow.
Absolute game changer. And I know that sounds like such a small thing, but I bought little ones for the road too.
Oh, no way. There's portable ones.
Yeah, tiny little, and there is the company that makes them. It's called like Sound Plus Sleep or something like that, but it's a really, really great thing. It also works as a Bluetooth speaker. Between that and there's a podcast called Sleep With Me.
Okay.
And he tells you boring bedtime stories in a droning voice that seriously, the first couple times you think like, what the hell's going on? And then it changes everything.
Wow.
Yeah. With some L-theanine as well, L-theanine, melatonin and stuff. So
yeah, I pretty consistently take magnesium, L-theanine, and melatonin at night. And the problem I have is I fall asleep relatively well.
Yeah.
But then I wake up at 4:30 in the morning every morning.
Yeah. The weighted blanket also I started doing.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't toss and turn that way. And it has changed my sleep so significantly. And I want to give you a weighted blanket.
Yeah.
But with the anxiety too, because it acts as acupressure.
Right.
So it really, really helps with that. But the brain, my old therapist told me, because I have a rapid brain, and so I would wake up anxious, and I still do sometimes, but saying you can't actually solve that problem in the middle of the night.
No, it's true. My brother always says that, and he's right. And you can't. I mean, there's no amount of worry. Someone recently said this to me, that worrying never solved a problem.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Like you can't die from a panic attack.
Yeah.
Which was really important for me to hear. And the worrying doesn't solve the problem. I call it borrowing trouble. Like that doesn't actually, the amount of worrying work doesn't solve the thing.
Right.
But I want this for you. I want the better sleep. I want the good stuff for all of us. And I have 5 questions that I ask everybody.
Yep.
So, and they're easy.
Okay, good.
But one throws people.
Okay.
And so, what's your go-to comfort food?
This is going to be weird for you to hear, but I love pad see ew.
Oh,
There's something about,
So
I love
good.
wide, slippery noodles.
No, I can't, that's the thing I can't eat right now, and I miss
know.
it. It's so, and do you have a place you like to get it, or do you make it?
No, I mean, there's like lots of places there's a new Thai restaurant in the old Pok Pok space that's really good.
Oh, I've heard it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. Croc.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
KROK, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I have a colleague who lives near it, and he's
Yeah.
been swearing by it. What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
Whew. It made me emotional. Gosh, there's a few foods that definitely make me emotional. Like anytime I have morel mushrooms. When I was a kid growing up, my grandmother and my mom and I would always go hunting for morels. Actually, I would never find them, but my mom knows where to find them at all times. So anything with morel mushrooms like immediately makes me think of my mom and my grandmother, and nostalgic and emotional in that sense. I went to Mountain in Venice last week. It was really
Venice, California, or
yeah,
Venice?
Venice, California. It's a Japanese restaurant from the Gelino folks. It was really, really good, and the food was delicious. But it reminded me of being in Japan when I was in Japan in 2009, filming The Next Iron Chef, and I got really, really sick. I mean, I had an RA flare up. We were filming the show, and I was having a flare up, and I slipped and fell on the floor, and I couldn't get off the floor, and it was just. And I came back and had spinal surgery the day after I got back from flying from Japan. So it was like it definitely. I mean, I have a real deep love for Japanese food, but I have this. I also remember being in so much pain and being in Japan. So there's that emotional element.
Yeah, emotions are, again, good, bad.
Yeah.
They're all the same. Yeah. What's the last meal that someone cooked for you in their home?
The last meal that someone cooked for me.
People don't cook for chefs. I know people are scared to cook for chefs.
They do. Let's see. I'm trying to think when the last time.
I'll cook for you, damn it.
That'll be the next meal that someone cooks for me. I'm drawing a blank right now. I have to come back to that.
Okay. What living musician, and this is another asking the universe, so this can happen. What living musician do you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
Oh, man. Chance the Rapper.
What would you make for Chance the Rapper?
I would do, let's see, what would I make for Chance the Rapper? I'd make paella. Because I'm pretty good at making paella outside.
I know you are. Tell me about explain your paella, please.
Well, I would make like proper paella. Like I'd build a fire outside, and I'd have a fire ring, and I'd put the pan down and saute up a ton of vegetables in the pan, then pull them out, and I would brown some meat in the pan and then pull it out. So maybe I might do like a really traditional paella of rabbit and snails with artichokes and fava beans in the summer. And a dark chicken stock and a sofrito, and I just cook it really slowly. Yeah,
I'm just imagining the smell.
It always smells so good.
Yeah, that wood fire.
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm just like having this intense sense memory of that.
Yeah.
Have you remembered what somebody cooked for you?
Oh yeah, getting back to that question. We went to dinner with some friends in Greenpoint a couple weeks ago, and they cooked a ton of food, and it was really, really lovely. And there was like roast chicken, and they made a gluten-free pasta dish that was really nice, and roasted vegetables. Yeah, it was really nice.
That's so lovely.
It's always nice when people cook for. I mean, people are always scared of cooking for chefs, and the reality is that we love it when people cook for us, and we're not critical at all.
Yeah, and even. I like to cook for food critics sometimes. Yeah. Like, it's fun because I cook the food that I know that I love, and I just throw it down, and there we go. So the last question, you've got 5 minutes for self-care. What do you do?
5 minutes for self-care. Take a 5-minute disco shower.
Oh, yeah.
I really, really love a super hot shower.
Products or anything? Like, do you any smell goods in there, or just the hot water?
Oh yeah, you know what I started doing a couple years ago, which I love, is I get like little little bottles of tea tree oil and eucalyptus oil, and I'll get the shower really, really hot, and then I'll just kind of shake a few drops into the bathtub, into the shower, and then you get in. You've got like this really nice eucalyptusy, tea tree oily, steamy shower.
God, that sounds so nice.
Yeah.
And is there anything that we haven't covered that you're like, damn it, I wish we had talked about?
Well, let's see. Well, we didn't do a deep dive into food and science, but that might have to be another podcast.
I think we can do a whole other podcast on that too.
Yeah, no, I think that like we should definitely do a
Seamus,
podcast on the.
Are you going to be doing a podcast about anything anywhere?
Yeah, I guess I could tease that a little bit. Yeah, so I'm launching a podcast very soon, and you'll find out more information about it on my Instagram. But yeah, I'm launching a podcast all about transformation and metamorphosis. And so we've got a bunch of really amazing guests, not only in the food world, in many, many different disciplines, who have gone through remarkable changes in life and come out the other side, overcoming incredible obstacles. So we're talking to a bunch of people, and that will be coming. It'll be launching in May.
Oh, that is fantastic. I think the world can use a lot more of hearing from you on this.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think there's, we're going to be talking with a lot of the people that were hugely inspirational to me as I was going through my transformation, and who I've gotten to know over the years, who have also, Matt Jennings being one of them, who's gone through his own journey and has been such, just to give Matt a little plug, because he's such a great guy, has been such a positive voice out there. And what I love about him is he doesn't take himself too seriously, which I think is really important, because it's serious shit saving your own life. But if you can,
is your podcast called that? That's amazing.
Exactly. But if you can come out the other side and have a sense of humor about it, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much,
thanks for having me.
coming.
No, I'm so glad to be here.
And you can find his books, Hero Food and Real Food Heals, at all of the book places.
Yeah, the book places.
All of the book places. And you can follow all of his social at Seamus Mullen on all of the platforms.
Yep.
And then SeamusMullen.com.
Exactly. That's the easy part about having a name that no one else has.
Yes, I know that one well. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank our producers, Jennifer Martinick, Alicia Cabral, and Amy Frank. Thank you to Douglas Wagner. Yeah, that Douglas Wagner for a delightful theme song. And if you like what you heard, please tell a friend, write a review, or rate us. And if there's something you'd like us to talk about or a guest you'd like to hear more from, please let us know. You can find me on Twitter at kittenwithawhip. Find more out about the show and catch up on all the episodes at foodandwine.com and on Food and Wine's YouTube page. Thank you for listening, and take good care of yourself until next time.